Thank you for bringing that. I've heard about it all my life and I didn't know.
Thank you, Bryn. That is a great story. I've heard that story before. I never get tired of hearing that story. I meant to say when I introduced him, imagine at 18 years old, your first mission and then experiencing that. It's just unbelievable. It really is unbelievable. So our next speaker is Orren Lee, and Carol is going to introduce him.
I am proud to introduce this next presenter. He is my husband. He is president of the 781st Bomb Squadron Association, and his birthday is the day after Veterans Day. And if he can survive this trip, we're going to celebrate it in Branson, Missouri, and he'll be 94. Wow. Orren Lee.
I'm going to fast forward what I'm going to say to start this out because I'm going to talk more my start anyway about my family and the depression and dust storms we had. But anyway, I was drafted and I went to Fort Snelling, Minnesota, and they sent me to Camp Roberts, California.
Lee, put the mic closer to your mouth.
Oh, okay.
Keep doing it. So we don't
Anyway, I went to Camp Roberts, California, and we got in this barracks, and the second day or two after we got in there, a sergeant came in, and he said, I need 3 volunteers for truck drivers. And of course, about half of the formation stood up and they thought that was a heck of a deal. So the 3 he chose left, and that night they came back and they were exhausted. They put them on a wheelbarrows hauling rock. That was truck driving. And so I found out you don't volunteer in the military, but it carried through in my other life. Like I'm president of 781st, but I didn't volunteer. My wife did. She for me. And anyway, the rest of my story is about Japan was bombed on December 7th, as you know, and the U.S. had been in an embargo on Japan. They were fighting in Tunisia and China, and 70% of their oil was come from that region. Well, and the United States had embargoed a lot of it, and this was the trouble. They really went to war because of oil. And well, then I'm going to tell you how my family, every family is something in the military, especially in my family. My grandfather was in the Civil War, and my dad, I was raised in Abercrombie, in a family of 12, but it was a family of yours, mine, and ours. My dad was born in 1872, and he had married and had 5 children. There's 2 sets of twins. My mother was born in 1881, and she had 4 children, and they both lost their mates, and they got married, and then there was 3 of us. Now, the oldest one, they were so much older than me that a lot of them I didn't really know. George was in World War I, and that was before I was born. And anyway, then I'll go on with, I had, George was one, and then came Harry and Melvin. They were twins. Harry was a pharmacist, he had his own drugstore, and Melvin was in Washington State, and Harry joined the Navy, he knew his number was coming up. And Melvin was drafted. Now, the unique part of this, they were 42 years old. Now, how many people would be drafted today at that age for the military? Then I had on my mother's side, Emery had a family living in Montana, and Emery was same age as Melvin and Harry, 42 years old. They were born in 1900, and then my other brother, Alvin, he was drafted, and he was in the Battle of the Bulge. And then down to my full brother had joined the National Guard, and they activated the National Guard. They said, a year and a day. There were some songs about it. So long, dear, I'll be back in a year was one of the songs. And of course, Pearl Harbor changed all that. 2 weeks afterwards, he was in the West Coast. He was shipped to Australia, and the Marines took Guadalcanal. But the Army was also in there, and Howard was one of it. And he got malaria, and he was sent home. And then Alvin was in the Battle of the Bulge, and he came home. He was in artillery, and his head was ringing all the time, and he wasn't too well from that. And then Orren was in the Air Corps, and how I got there, I transferred from the infantry to the Army Air Corps, so I'm still in the Army, as all of you guys were. I gotta watch my notes a little bit, or I might goof things up. Well, I have a story to tell about this. I got to Camp Roberts, and my good friend from home, he was at the University of North Dakota and ROTC, and 2 weeks after I got there, in the barracks, he walked, and we had a great time. We together every weekend we would do something and go to shows, and we had a pass and went to Los Angeles. My sister lived in Glendale, and we got off the car and by the Hollywood Bowl, and Harry says, Frank Sinatra's singing there tonight. They're very controversial because this was Hollywood Bowl was for high-class music, I guess, call it, and symphonies and the like. And I'd never even heard of Frank Sinatra. And so he was just getting to be popular. And we were up in the stands. We got in free. We had uniform on. We got up in the stands, and they had a bunch of girls up in front. I think he was the first one that had screamers. He'd come out, he'd sing, and they'd stand up and scream and swoon and everything. And of course, we were just, it was a big joke for us guys. And then anyway, from Camp Roberts, I transferred to the Air Corps. We had to take some tests, and I was lucky enough to pass it because half of our barracks applied, and they didn't get the transfer. Anyway, on Harry, I have something to tell you about him. He was shot in the head right here, but he had a helmet on, and it was in Alsace-Lorraine in a battle. And he became, after the war, he became pastor of Hollywood Lutheran Church till he retired. But he had a plate in his head, and he had survived the war. And the reason I'm having this is in '82, the Lutheran Standard, and I've still got it, had an article and a picture of these two pastors. And they met in Indiana or somewhere like that, and there was these here, I think it was 6 German Mountain Division and 20 former soldiers of the U.S. Army, 7th Infantry Division, and 500 worshipers were to hear when Reverend Harry Durkee of Hollywood put an arm around the shoulder of one of the German veterans, William Gotchenstrutter, and recited a poem written for the occasion. I'm going to have Carol read the poem. This is to show that Americans are the most forgiving people in the world.
Your brother and my brother in love were bred. Your brother and my brother in hatred are dead. They never hated, they never knew the sense of what they had to do, but perished, brother slain by brother, who might as well have loved each other. A peace conference.
Well, when I left Camp Roberts, I got transferred to the Army Air Corps, and I went to radio school. I was sent to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, radio school. We had about 12,000 GIs and 41,000 was the population of Sioux Falls at that time. It's about close to 200 now. And after that, I went to Yuma, Arizona, to gunnery school, and I joined a crew, a Becker crew in, well, I went to Yuma, Arizona to the gunnery school, but I joined this in Pueblo, Colorado, and we trained there. And one night, it was just a night flight, and we had to fly over the Rocky Mountains, and it's dark, and during, my radio room was right behind the co-pilot. And there's a little window there, and number 3 engine blew a cylinder head, and there was fire all the way to the tail. I could see it real plain because I was right close to it. And our pilot feathered the engine, the props, and it burned itself out. And we landed in Amarillo, Texas. And the reason I'm telling this is I read where more planes were lost in training than there was lost in the war. And he took our pilot said, "Put on your parachute." And right over the Rocky Mountains, in a very dark night. Well, then, let me see where I'm at. I had to write this up. My memory isn't very good anymore. Oh, we assigned a plane in Lincoln, Nebraska. We went to New England, then off to Newfoundland, and there was a snowstorm, so we didn't get out of there for a few days. And then to the Azores in the middle of the Atlantic. And while we were in the Azores, we had a bunch of blankets in our, we had some cargo, and we spread them out by the ocean, and that's where we had to sleep. There was no building there. And from there I went to Africa, and from there to Italy. And I'm just trying to, oh yeah, Gioia, Italy. Some of you may know about that. That was a staging area. They took our plane away, and then they sent us to 781st Bomb Squadron. And I flew 5 missions. My crew only flew 3 because we were a replacement crew, and I flew 3 with them, but being a radio operator, and they needed one on another mission, so I flew with another crew. And then I went down to the Radio Shack, and they had the deal where you would listen for the German guns, the radio operator would, and you get the frequency, and they were using radar and you send a signal back at the same frequency, and that would jam the German guns. And I don't know how much it helped, but we also had a flak, not flak, it was like Christmas aluminum. And we dropped that out, they had a chute there for it, and of course that would spread out, and the radar would hit that, and they'd be shooting at a bunch of this here. chaff. And I'm getting close to the end. Oh, I'm gonna hear. I received the American Theater Ribbon, European, African, Middle Eastern Ribbon, Gold Conduct Medal, Air Medal, and Victory Medal. I was proud to serve my country in World War II. Everyone was very supportive of the war. Thank you.